Hey y'all, to borrow a turn of phrase, the rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. Fresh and new from Satan's armpit, aka Northern Virginia, thinking and drinking has returned. So kick back, relax, pour yourself a beverage, and let's get to it. First things first, I wound up taking an unplanned hiatus from this project for a while because of this year being, well, what it is. In the first half of this year, I dealt with 2 deaths in the family, a bad case of the flu, a minor case of the plague, and moving my disabled ass all the way from Washington State to take a new job with the Marines here in Virginia. Also, there is the little matter of finishing and defending my master's thesis, which I did. Oh, I did it on the 14th, I passed, and so that means I've graduated and I've finished grad school. You might say I've been a little bit preoccupied. I was going to spend this episode talking about all the things that I've done to pass time during quarantine, but, that doesn't seem quite right in light of recent events, so I think y'all can wait. Probably a week or so for that. What I want to talk about in my theme of observing and commenting on social trends is the sudden prominence of the particular kind of woman called Karen. There's been outrage over this slang term, some even going so far as to call it a slur. As someone with an ethnically German last name that's basically a huge well of consonants that people have deliberately mispronounced so many different ways that I've really stopped caring. They usually do it as a way to get under my skin. Well, my capacity for empathy for white women getting offended over Karen is pretty small. And in my case, people aren't being racist. They're just being assholes in general. That's the difference. So, what exactly is a Karen? There's a lot of confusion over this. A Karen, in the common vernacular, is a white woman who is painfully aware of the privileges that her skin color affords her, and she then deliberately, maliciously uses these privileges in order to harm people who don't have that same level of safety. To distill the term to its essence, this term describes a vindictive, privileged, racist bitch who deliberately tries to hurt others. That said, the term isn't pithy, and it takes up valuable characters on Twitter to try and describe all of that. So, Karen it is. A concrete example would be the woman who called the cops on a black man who was birdwatching in a park, knowing full well that the cops could detain him with potentially lethal force. Was she actually being threatened by this guy? No, but her nasty ass did this anyway. If you are named Karen and you don't fit the stereotype, hey, that's great. I know a few myself, one of them being my stepmother Karen, who's a badass. So if you're listening to this, Karen, hi. Here's the thing though, if you have this name and you are offended by people who are using it as shorthand for criminally awful behavior, consider the root of it. Think about why they're doing it. And then look at how many people who have names that are butchered not because they're difficult to say, but because the speaker wants to make the owner of the name feel bad about not being white. Is that happening to you? No. Keep on being a good person and let your behavior speak for itself and counter the stereotype. One other thing that should be pointed out is that simply standing up for yourself and asserting your rights is not what's being talked about here. Assertiveness in and of itself is not a bad thing for women, and it's often interpreted, usually by men, as being bitchy when a woman tries to protect herself from shitty behavior. When it's used to call out things that are harmful, hateful, and or illegal, assertiveness is a very good thing. However, when it's used to deliberately harm someone who is not like you, that's bad. That's what all the fuss is about, women who are being racist and malicious. Is that you? No. Carry on smartly. If it is, kindly unfuck yourself. So, what is a positive example of female assertiveness? There's one, and it's painfully funny in retrospect. I stopped in southern Indiana on the second to last night of my 5-day trip from Washington State to Northern Virginia. I was so tired after 4 days of travel, and all I wanted to do was to go to sleep. Not thinking too much of it, I checked into my reserved room at the local Motel 6. In the interest of being polite, let's just say that this place would not have been too far out of place in the opening scenes of a Law and Order SVU episode. My room reeked of weird chemicals. There was mold on the baseboards, holes in the sheets and in the curtains, and my cats would not stop licking these weird random spots on the floor. It was really, really creepy. It's the kind of place where it would not be strange to find a dead body in the dumpster. But having limited funds and even less energy, even though this place gave me the creeps, I decided to suck it up and keep my reservation and just sleep. Imagine my surprise when 2 days later, sitting on the floor of my brand new apartment, I checked my bank account balance to find out that this particular motel had charged me an additional $200. This is in addition to my $50 room deposit, for reasons that I could not entirely guess. I did some checking around, and they were charging me for a broken TV. Well, I didn't even touch or even use the TV set, so that was kind of fishy. Well, so what can you do in that case? I decided to take it to the Better Business Bureau. I wrote a polite but very pointed letter in which I described everything, which I just told you. And, well, it got solved at the corporate level. I got a complete refund of all of the charges and a nice apology. I don't know if anything else happened, but at this point I really don't care. And I'm not taking down my 1-star review, because that place was fucking nasty. On a sidebar, a few people with whom I've shared this experience have tossed out the good old chestnut of caveat emptor, buyer beware, saying that Motel 6 isn't that great of a place to stay with to begin with. I'll counter that by saying that this is the only time that I've had a bad experience in one of their establishments. Also, when you've had 12 years of military experience, your standards of what count as acceptable for sleeping quarters might vary. But even I have my limits. So, where does this stack up on the range of acceptable assertiveness? Well, seeing as I was illegally scammed out of $250, this was perfectly acceptable. All I asked for was a refund, and I said nothing untrue. That's where the difference lies. And here are the criteria. What is the situation? What is your response? And what is your motive? I know that this requires some self-examination, but if you are genuinely a good person and you're willing to do the work, you won't be afraid to hold up the mirror and work with what you see. And since we're in wave 1.5 whatever of the plague, you'll have some time to do it. Another way that you can use your privilege as a white woman is that when you see somebody who isn't white, who is getting falsely accused of something, or who is being treated badly because of their skin color or because of their last name, their background, their perceived status, whatever, step in and do something about it. Be an obnoxious pain in the ass, but do it on their behalf. That is how you use privilege to be a good person. Again, it might seem kind of awkward at first, but you know what? It'll get easier after you try it. Something else that I'd like to bring up in closing is that using one woman's name to refer to a specific kind of racist, entitled, bigoted white woman isn't anything new. It hasn't always been Karen, but the stereotype has been around for decades, if not longer. More often than not, it's rooted in Black culture as a way of swiping back at white women who deliberately harm people outside of their race group, assuming, often correctly, unfortunately, that their skin color will keep them safe from punishment. Calling Karen a slur willfully ignores its usage in this way, and trivializes the deliberate mispronunciation of Black, Hispanic, Asian, and indigenous names by white people as a way of marginalizing non-white culture. If you're still angry about a white woman's name being used as an insult, now you know how it feels to have something that you're proud of turned into something that brings shame. It's gross, no matter who does it, but the difference is, thanks to ingrained race structures in the US, white people unfortunately can get away with it a lot easier. There is nothing wrong with a woman sticking up for herself if her health, safety, and/or personal liberties are genuinely being curtailed. However, there's a very clear line between assertiveness and bigotry, and too many people are ignoring that in their rush to be offended by a codified call-out of legitimately bad behavior. That's all I've got for you today. Come on back next week to hear how I've stayed alive and somewhat sane during the time of plague.